Good morning and welcome back to Other Worlds Wednesday on Gaming with ADHD. Today we are taking a look at the Alien Archive for the Starfinder Role Playing Game from Paizo Publishing. So, this is, just to give a little bit of background, released in 2017. It is 159 pages and it retails for $39.99 for the print version or $9.99 in PDF from Paizo. It is the first monster manual or bestiary type book for the line, although they have expanded it out to 4 Alien Archives now with additional content that currently I do not have, so I can't really speak to it, but today we're going to focus on what we get out of the first Alien Archive. So, what do we get inside? We get 60 alien races and creatures, and we get 4 appendices. The appendices are for creating monsters and NPCs, summoning creatures, primarily focusing on the creatures that you find out of the first Alien Archive, and then also simple template graphs, basically ways to modify existing creatures to either give them different abilities, subtypes, things like that. And then also just some universal rules for creatures, some abilities that you find within the book, some additional options that you can add to a creature if you want. And then finally, it comes with an index of the various creatures in the book, all organized by the challenge rating. So that way the game master can look at the book, figure out what's an appropriate encounter for his players, and jump right to it, as opposed to having to look through each individual entry and kind of figure out the challenge rating from there. So, as far as the races and creatures, there are about 120 pages for this. And there are 60 different race and creature types. Each entry is on 2 pages, so depending on whether you have the print version, it's actually really nice because it does allow you to lay the book out in front of you and see both pages at once. On PDF, I did have to kind of fuss with the different settings to kind of figure it out, but it does actually have options for side-by-side pages, but you then also have to kind of figure out how to get the right pages to display. So it can be done, and it's really nice so that way you can just have all of the information right in front of you. 20 of these races can actually be used as player characters. Some of them we're already familiar with. The Drow, for instance, are not new races to either Pathfinder or Dungeons and Dragons, but they are new to Starfinder, and so they do actually give you rules that you can actually run those, in addition to 19 other races. Now, some of the notable races to me, just as I was going through looking at all of the different options, just a few that kind of stuck out to me that I thought were very interesting. The Hesper, for example, basically it is a fey creature, so sort of your fairies, that kind of thing. But in this case, it's a nuclear fey. And the reason I found the concept interesting is because it's an adaptation of modern technology to a traditional fairy or sprite type creature. It has an ability where it can, if it's able to touch something, it can cause a mutation that lasts for up to 24 hours if they fail their fortitude roll. So it's It like I said, it's just an interesting twist on a very traditional concept in fantasy, but how perhaps how something would adapt to more current times or a science fiction setting. The next that I really liked was the Skittermander. Now, this one, I kind of call it the fuzzy space goblin. Yes, I realize that space goblins are actually a thing in Starfinder. I just thought it was, an interesting adaptation, trying to take something we're already kind of familiar with, but then modernizing it or changing it to a science fantasy setting. And they are definitely different. They are a bit friendlier than your goblins, for instance. But it's an interesting little race that I found. Now, admittedly, they are clearly the we're going to call it the marketing race for Starfinder, similar to the goblins for Pathfinder. They are used for introductory adventures, all sorts of things. They're just kind of silly things, and I fully admit that the marketing worked on me. I like these little creatures, and I think it was just fun to have them. The next one is the Formian. Now, this is a great type of race if you want to have sort of a Starship Troopers kind of game. Basically, the heroes against the horde of bug type creatures. But one thing that was a little bit different is they actually even made these player character races, or a player character race. They give a couple of examples of the type, a warrior and a drone, I believe it was. Give me 1 second because I'm a little distracted. Yes, a Formian worker and a Formian warrior. So they do give you a couple examples in the book, but like I said, they do give you the option for taking what would be sort of a communal type race and how they would adapt to being adventures, being a player character. So I think that was kind of neat, just as far as doing something besides just a giant, hey, here's a swarm target that you're going to throw 100 at your players. And then the next one that I really liked was the marooned one. So basically, this is a wight, or kind of an undead spirit that's attached to a location. I really like the description of the creation process. Basically, it is this lonely, stranded ghost. He or she died in this place, but the spirit hasn't been able to leave. And so they actually go out of their way to try and attract other creatures to keep them company. So it's a way to present an interesting challenge to your players, because they're going to try and convince the players to not try and escape or get away from the planet because they're lonely. But in the end, that particular creature then ends up dying themselves and turning into a marooned one. So it was just a really, really interesting concept. I really liked what they did with this one, so that's why I pointed that one out. Now, there are obviously plenty of other races. One that I do think could have been better, they mentioned dragons. Now, the dragons, basically they give you an example of a young adult blue dragon, but that was it. They give you some graphs for the different chromatic types of dragons, but nothing for different sizes of dragons, no instructions on how to adapt the particular graphs to the one example provided. I realize they do give instructions for the graphs at the end of the book, but for the dragons, it just seemed a little off to me. It's probably because I'm really new to this system. I will fully admit that. But regardless, I realized they were trying to limit the entry to just 2 pages. But the elementals, for example, they had 7 different sizes and 4 elemental graphs. So I think they could have done better with the dragons, even if they had to up it to, say, 4 pages. I realized that would go away from the 2-page entries that they've been doing for all of the other creatures. But again, personal theory, but I'm obviously not a developer. But again, just kind of my opinion there. All right, another couple of honorable mentions. They do give stats for grays, your typical gray Roswell kind of alien. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the drow. For grays, it's kind of an iconic science fiction race. It's been used in all sorts of different settings, and so it just makes sense to add it here. It was nice to see it as just kind of one of the first entries. Whether you use it or not, again, I think it's kind of a science fiction staple. As far as the drow, I really do like the treatment that they got here. They still kept to the traditional drow, typically, not very good aligned characters, but finding a way to, how would they deal with being a spacefaring race, and I thought that was a nice touch to adapt those over. So, what a couple other things I do want to mention. The appendices, there are 4 of them. The first one gives you rules to create monsters and NPCs. Basically, there are about 9 just easy to follow steps for selecting the stats, the abilities that they have, and it really just walks you through it. I haven't completely used it yet, but I was going over the rules, and I liked how they put that together. So the fact that they have 60 different races here, that's typically kind of small for a bestiary type book like this, but the fact that they give you rules for, hey, you want to come up with something different, you want to do your own thing, here's some easy to follow instructions. The second appendice is about summoning creatures. Basically, it's a new spell that your character can take, and basically rules for how to summon the different creatures in the book based on the spell level, things like that. Is it one? Is it multiple? Again, based on the spell level. Next were the template graphs, basically ways to modify the existing creatures. I do like this because since they only, in most cases, they just give one example of the particular creature type. You can take that and either come up with some new story as far as why the particular creature would have a different ability, or maybe you're trying to up the challenge rating, and so it's a lack of a better way to put it in my head right now, a different evolution of the creature type. I think that was a fantastic addition. Typically, it seems to be subtypes like astral, celestial, synthetic, but there are different things like fiery, things like that. So, just ways to modify the existing creatures or just help with the creation process when making your own. And then the last appendix is universal creation rules. They are special abilities that sometimes are found within the book, so just broken out so that you can have them listed, but they are used with the different creatures in the book. All right. There are 3 different types of abilities. There are extraordinary. Basically, it is a non-magic based ability. So something that the creature can do just automatically. It does, is not affected by magic in any way. There are also spell-like abilities, so it works just like a spell, same kind of limitations as far as casting time, things like that, and it is magic-based, but it's a natural ability that the creature has. And then the final thing is the supernatural abilities. Basically, it is magic-based, but it acts like a natural ability, so there's typically no casting time, things like that. So, with that said, what do I like about the book? First thing, if you have watched any of my videos in the past, you know that, especially for role-playing games, I am a big fan of the art in the books. Obviously, there is a delicate balance of when there's too much art versus not enough, and I think that they do a fantastic job here. Typically, each creature gets 2 pieces of art, usually a full-body piece of art, and sometimes either another full body piece or just like a special kind of like descriptor piece of art. The Hesper, for example, had the full body piece of art that I showed earlier, but then there was just kind of a small piece showing the hands and sort of like a radioactive substance. I don't remember exactly what it was, but just something small like that. I also like the fact that they give you player options. the fact that that a third of the creatures listed here can also be player races, I think is fantastic. It is a science fiction setting that is much more, I would say, reminiscent of Star Wars. So lots of different alien creatures, lots of different options for what players can do. And so the fact that they are giving players that option, I think, gives a lot of different role-playing opportunities, but then just also a lot of easy ways to differentiate what players want to use as player characters. And then also the page layout. I really liked the 2-page side-by-side layout. I have both the PDF and the hardcover book. To be able to take the book, put it out, and have the entire entry for that creature right in front of me, I think was a fantastic step. Like I said, with the PDF, it takes a little bit of finesse to get it to display right. I still need to try it out on my tablet, but at least on the desktop, it worked just fine. All right, and then even though, like I said, I'm a little bit late to the game, this book is 5 years old. I do like the fact that they give the creature creation rules, even though there are 4 different books of the Alien Archive series out already. So the fact that it's in there in the first book, boom, gets it out there, gives you a lot of options. Personally, I will probably end up using a lot more prepared content as opposed to creating my own, but I just like having the option there. All right, then my neutrals. So it's advertised as containing 80 bizarre life forms. Well, that's correct if you include the variants, but there are usually only, there are only the 60 different, races / creatures. So the elementals, for example, had, I believe it was 7 different types of elementals, but most of them it's just the 1 entry. So I get it. It makes sense, but I would prefer something in the advertising to be like 60 different creatures, including optional variants, things like that. Personal preference, but I get what they're doing for the marketing. It's fine. Not really anything to complain about. Just something that I noticed. All right, things that I disliked. So, in current day, I get the format that Paizo is going on. They're very, I don't want to call it invested, but they've kind of developed themselves along the same kind of lines as Dungeons and Dragons. The player handbook, Game Master Guide, and the Monster Manual. I realize that you get the player guide and Game Master content in the core rulebook, but especially for nowadays, 21st century, at least include a small bestiary. They should have included some of these creatures in the core rulebook, so that, especially if you're a new player, if you're somebody new to the game, you're just wanting to try it out, and you don't want to buy multiple books, or you missed out on Humble Bundle, something like that. To at least be able to have all of the content in one place, I think would have been useful. But I understand why they did it. But I do think that nowadays, a core rulebook should have enough that a game can be created from scratch, right away. The other thing that I really disliked, like I said, I'm still kind of new to Starfinder, the special ability classification. In Alien Archive, there was no reference to what EX, SP, and SU stood for. I literally dug through the Alien Archive book for quite a while trying to figure it out, and I couldn't. Finally decided to check the core rulebook, at which point I was able to find the rules for what these are and what they mean. Basically, the abilities just had the abbreviation EX for extraordinary, SP for spell-like, and SU for supernatural. But they either should have had a description in Alien Archive or at least a reference, just like a couple of lines saying, hey, go check out the core rulebook for what these abbreviations mean. Could have included a page number, but I would have even been fine with just something telling me to go look in the core rulebook. So, other than that, what did I think? I think this was a great first shot for the bestiary for Starfinder. Like I said, I've pointed out a lot of the things that I liked and I didn't like as I've been going over this. Obviously, because they don't include any of these creatures in the core rulebook, it's basically a must-have. The fact that you can get it for $10 through Paizo themselves if you just want to go with PDFs. Personally, I have been buying a lot of PDFs lately. I do think it is a little overpriced for the hardcover. It seems like it's kind of a small book at $40. But with that said, I got my hardcover, at a Barnes and Noble sale when it was half off. So there are ways to get it a little bit cheaper, but that's up to you. But obviously, it's Paizo, most likely carried at your friendly local game store as well, so fairly easy to locate and get. Overall, I'm absolutely going to recommend that you get it. I think it's a good mix of creatures, good mix of new races, new player options, and again, it's a required book, basically. So, other than that, I hope you enjoyed this review. If you have any thoughts, did I get something wrong? Please put it down in the comments. I'd absolutely love to get your feedback. But otherwise, thank you for watching, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye.